Now I think I need to clarify why I insist on describing myself as an agnostic atheist rather than simply an atheist. I do hold on to the slim possibility that there might be a god or gods of some description.
Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Come on and fly.
Let me assure you, dear listeners, that this will end up being a positive video. You'll either claim to be an atheist or a theist, once I lay out all my thinking for your enjoyment. It really shouldn't be that complicated. Oh well, let me try to anyway. Hello, and hope you're all doing well. I have a tendency towards single-sentence clarity for many things I perceive as obfuscated. Yeah, I went to college and managed obtaining that degree, yet my nature is always towards the most naked truth possible to be had. So allow me to begin with what I know as certain. An agnostic atheist is someone who hasn't thought about it very deeply. Atheism is an in-your-face, plain-for-all-to-see proposition to understand. Its statement is a simple one. I don't believe in your God. Period. Therefore, everybody is an atheist. You don't think this is true? Then please describe to me this creature called the total theist. Please allow me. This is a person who, without qualification, accepts every god presented to them. They believe it all. The only requirement being is that you keep supplying gods for them to believe it. Gods for breakfast, gods for lunch, and gods for dinner time. So please understand that everyone is an atheist of some sort. Why we distinguish theism from this fact today is because it makes a whole lot of sense to do so within our particular society, which thankfully can exist quite well without any examples of total theism, or fanatical theism for that matter. So far I presented to you a simple diagram for a black and white circuit, which in our reality truly is all black. Now let's talk about that spectrum claimed to be in the middle of this circuit, the one where agnosticism to theism lies within, okay? At one time I believed in God, so I've traversed the spectrum, going towards and ending up at the certainty that there are no gods. Faith is something you prefer to be true. Beliefs are characterized by being either rational and reasoned, or else unfounded. So what I'm saying to you all is that I discovered my belief in God as being unfounded. But then why would I prefer there to be a God in the first place? This is the very question I hope you'll see as being at the root of all agnosticism, as well as this video's central message about the validity of holding on to this very belief. Think about this. What was there before agnosticism? When the first God was invented, was there this grandiose,
uncertain philosophy that questions our very capacity to find evidence of a God?
Existing beforehand? Nope. There was and always has been just the basic human fear of the unknown. How can I prove this to all of you highly evolved and civilized agnostic atheists? Very easily with this one-word theory called explosions. Imagine explosions, each and every example in your own mind, growing in intensity all the way towards quite a doozy called a nova. That's when a sun explodes. So why not imagine our own sun violently exploding all of a sudden, and what happens with certainty after the effect reaches us within 8.5 to 10 minutes later? All of mankind will perish. All life itself will perish, including that 99.99% of anything we ever constructed. Mankind's legacy will be a bunch of fading radio waves and those 2 satellites that left our solar system a while back. But more importantly, to the point of this video, the God concept will disappear as well. The only thing sustaining its use was the human mind itself. Now, how can I prove to you, without being a scientist, a psychologist, a mathematician, or a theologian, that our God concept is entirely man-made? Well, how much of an expert do you need to be to tell that our sun gives off warmth, or that water feels wet? Luckily for us, despite that word game maze of philosophy, theology, and mysticism, the "I can get this" handle affixed to the God concept has been so easily constructed for anyone's and everyone's benefit to grasp. All religions consider it a major advantage towards their efforts at growing even larger. That is, to provide a handle that even an idiot like myself can figure out how to grab onto.
If there is a God, I suspect that very few people, if any, would be able to describe it accurately.
Accuracy is a beautiful thing, whence referring to things that are true and real. But when something is based upon unreality, in order for it to be understandable to its widest audience, it has to possess a basic idea for them to grasp onto, something that is very close to real things common around them. And for the God concept, a conception that states that an outside agency exists to manipulate reality in some way, it consists of two simple parts, utility and interaction. Somebody invents a God to fulfill a purpose, and this God subsequently interacts with our reality.
So let me understand this. Only these two things are what gods within the God concept are supposed to do, right?
Yes, that's pretty much all of it. Okay, that was simple enough. Now let's start dabbling with agnosticism and the uncertainty towards things that exist outside of the God concept, yet are still considered, that is, considered with a very, very lowercase letter c, as very similar in scope and properties. What are these gods like that exist outside of our God conception? What do they do? 1. They begin things somehow, and then walk away never again to interact further with our reality. This concept is something called deism.
I think there are two possible options. One would be a being or species of beings who created us by seeding life on this planet some 3.5 billion years ago, who physically exist or existed at some other location in the universe. But where it or they came from, I would have no idea. The other possibility would be a being or beings who somehow created this universe. This for me is highly speculative and makes the assumption that it actually is possible for there to be some dimension of existence outside of what we call space-time.
Deistic gods are interesting in the fact that they have no use for the God concept themselves, yet are pursued relentlessly by those who give credence to the validity of the God concept itself. You may have heard of somebody named William Lane Craig. Well, it's an old idea that comes to America through many of our founding fathers, who wish to avoid calling themselves atheists for obvious reasons, many of which are evident even to us today. But this fact has always been obscured by the unpalatability of calling oneself a non-believer within our very own society and political system for any reason whatsoever. Deism is slavery too, in that it enslaves things which, I imagine if they had any choice in the matter, do not wish to be called gods or a godlike stand-in. We call this the God of the Gaps argument, which, as you'll also see, retains much of its applicability for the sake of the agnostic atheist. For an atheist community, which would rather strive for accuracy and truth over any word games, it should be openly admitted that deism still exists within the minds of our timid agnostics, either in the guise of accepted yet unexamined arguments or a misused application of uncertainty, as we materialists prefer to know it within method and science.
Bunto, how can you claim to know that no gods exist somewhere out there? Don't you have to know everything in the universe to claim the knowledge that there aren't any gods? Please, do not make such knowledge claims if you don't have any knowledge of that weird little god that exists under a tiny blue rock on planet Deltoid 5, located somewhere inside the constellation Darkside.
This argument hinges on something that the God concept has plenty of capacity for: mysterious things out there. Yet if you'll remember what I said earlier, the God concept also has this easy-to-grasp handle for every one of us to grab onto called utility and interaction. Simply ask yourself the question, what is the utility of the tiny blue rock god to humans? And how does it interact with us? To see that this mysterious thing out there really doesn't want to be corralled by our God concept. What I'm saying is, the agnostic who uses this argument hasn't produced that very basic handle for the thing to be called a god in the first place. Well, let me go back and recurse that earlier question. What are these gods like that are outside of our God conception? What do they do? Okay, point number 2. These gods outside the God concept seem to have exceeded the whole enchilada itself, especially the name God. The argument goes like this.
Look, Bunto, you're getting it all wrong. These things aren't even called gods. They're too mysterious for that. Our minds haven't advanced that far yet and probably never will.
Well, as you know, I can conceptualize a lot of things, if you can stand any of my videos. But when we all get together to brainstorm this crazy wonderful shit on YouTube, we can imagine even bigger oddities. But please keep in mind, conception is one thing, utility is another regarding the God concept. Would you go to a store and spend $100 on something nobody knows what it's for or how it works? Emphasis on nobody. Let's say they can't even find it for you at the store after you've paid for it. Well, as you can guess, this really isn't a fair transaction, much less an everyday one, that could ever take place within reason. Gods, too, are wonderful that way in that they have to possess a purpose that is readily apparent for the person who's going to start kneeling down and worshiping it. There are sentimental gods who are only sentimental in purpose. There are gods who only guard and protect things. But there really isn't a god that is just a god for the hell of it.
Yeah!
Somebody on this planet will find a purpose for it, believe me. Here's looking at you, William Lane Craig. Let's go back to that non-existent spectrum, the one that says that something can exist as an uncertain god within what we'll call today as everyday Joe Lunchbucket atheism. As you eat your bologna sandwich on Wonder Bread, you know that there aren't any gods because you can't detect them interacting within your everyday reality, even with really, really smart people's equipment to help you out with all of it. But another guy on your job site says that even besides all this technologically advanced equipment, he'd rather believe that something could exist out there somewhere. Emphasis being on the word could. Well, this word, I believe, isn't generally used as scientific equipment in any useful sense that I know of. When Erwin Schrödinger devised his wonderful uncertainty principle, he never used the word could to conclude all the intricate mathematics behind the fact he discovered. Quote, "Just believe me, fellas, this formula could be true." End quote. No, he produced a way to utilize uncertainty itself. Do we see this in philosophy, theology, or mysticism? Give me a break.
Hey, why don't you two assholes get back to work now?
Some of my more psychoanalytical type listeners have noticed that Bunto sure takes great effort to keep his own God concept out of the clutches of reality as we know it. Oh, not meaning that any of its validity isn't sound thinking, mind you. Bunto's always very careful about that. But he seems fearful of something emerging forth out of the God concept as he sees it now. I'm sure in the future there will be that possibility to create an artificial God based upon what we've conceived in our God concept. We would all enjoy to be able to just think about getting help whenever we could use it. An emergency situation, or if we need money, food, or shelter. Plenty of things come to mind, and there would be that newly created artificial God to fulfill them all. Amen. Yet, with all my experience gained so far throughout life, I don't think that helping people will be the foremost priority of any artificial God will create. That heartless machine would be more like the Google Plus ghost banning algorithm on steroids, indiscriminate as well as all-powerful. I can assure all of you fellow mortals, a few days after advanced technology creates our own artificial God, based upon those expectations coming from our God concept, anyone left around will be a theist. But to find one dimly lit bright side to this, should to our misfortune it ever come to pass, there will also be a fact now clearly discernible. Every notion held about agnosticism will be seen for what it truly is and ever was. Gauzy rubbish invented to soothe the basic human fear of the unknown. Time to finish all this up with an unsentimental observation. Speaking for us plain old atheists, the concept is there, but the God definitely isn't. But now, if you consider yourself an agnostic atheist who cannot believe in God's existence, because it is unfounded of course, why should you feel the need to absolve your own faith in this decision by announcing your agnosticism as something other than what it really is? Why not instead call it God-fearing, but without the God?
I didn't think I'd need to say this, but atheist is a noun. I am an atheist. Agnostic is an adjective.
Agnostic is an adjective.
Agnostic is an adjective. Agnostic is an adjective.
Faith is only that something that we prefer to be true, and not very useful in qualifying things as true themselves. Only method can do that, and our whole universe is like that when dealing with anything man-made. We ourselves may always point to something as being there, but in the reality to which we rely upon every nanosecond since time and space began, there is no there. That's all for now, but please remember. Okay, I know this isn't a Hill Country Heretics Anonymous video, but I couldn't resist trying to sneak it past for old time's sake. Please come by to check our weekly Pro Fide Veritatis counter-apologetic stuff. This is Bunto, and all of us plain old atheists hope that you've enjoyed this video. Take care.
No stopping what can't be stopped. No killing what can't be killed.
Something out there waiting for us.